Hill in the gun with Hill to his right. Play action to the right. Steps up, throws over the middle. He's got Thornton. Caught it! Junior Thornton. Split. 6. Touchdown. Midway.
Smoaky.com presents the Texas High School Football Show on Sikkim 365 Radio. Brought to you by Peters Chevrolet, Bubba's 33, TFNB, your bank for life, and Texas Farm Bureau Insurance.
Hill, right side, finds a seam. Hill, 20. Hill, 10. Hill, touchdown. Midway, no flags. Midway takes the lead by more than one score. And how about the Big Uglies inside?
Now, here's David Smoak.
Welcome back. It's week number 4 of the Texas High School Football Podcast. And, of course, our great sponsors that you see all throughout the show, including our title sponsor, Peters Chevrolet, peterscars.com. To look back at some of the games last week, some of the bigger wins and teams that kind of needed a win, and then also some high school football stories from around the state. And most of them are not good because of either suspensions or fights or everything else in between. The games from last week that I want to bring up, a couple of them, Timpson, they're really, really good. Terry Bussey is their quarterback. He's fantastic. They beat Dangerfield. And Dangerfield, yes, there's the name. It's like logo and all that. But they're pretty good. And they've been putting up big points, and Timpson beat them straight up, 54-28. North Shore flexed their muscles, as they always do. 30-point win against Spring Westfield. Two teams that had kind of gotten off to for them because they're so used to winning. Shiner and Refugio had a couple of early hickeys. Both of them won games that they needed to win. Shiner with the win against Polk by 1, 22-21, and Refugio beat Edna 40-22. Also, South Oak Cliff, the defending state champions in 5A, are 0-3, but we know they're really, really good. Look who they've played, including that TV game against Duncanville. Lost to DeSoto, who's in Duncanville's district, 42-23. I don't look at non-district records. In college football, you can't lose too much, or you're kind of out of the mix, but you can still win a conference title and get to a bowl game, or get a winning record and get to a bowl game. South Oak Cliff is going to be fine. They got some things to work on with their offense, but they'll be fine. They're 0-3 at the same time. They're still going to be a favorite to come out of their district and get on to the playoffs as well. Allen had that bad loss earlier to Bosco out of California, but that's a nice win for them against Arlington Martin, 27-16 for Lee Wigington and the Eagles. That's a game that caught my attention. And Malakoff, after the loss to Grandview, after the big win against West Rush to start the year in 3A, a really good matchup with 4A Salado and Tom Westerberg in that passing attack at Salado. Malakoff wins it, guts it out 29-27. I think perhaps the best win was the Connolly win on the road against Yo. Maybe not the best win, but one that, last week we had Terry Garrick on the show, and they follow up the win against La Vega, which was huge, with a 45-40 shootout win in Cameron against Yo. Their quarterback, Jelani McDonald, dinged up in that game. He was able to make some plays along with Kiefer Sibley, the running back, who's putting up huge numbers. They do win the game. They have China Spring next, and we're going to hear from Tyler Beatty, the China Spring head coach, here momentarily. And I'll tell you what, Katy has run Houston, or not, North Shore has too. We know what Katy is. They're a machine. 14-13. Tompkins is really good in that same school district. That's a 14-13 win for Katy. Now, neat story here. Alto. The first high school football playoff game I ever covered was Alto, down, of course, in East Texas near the Lufkin area. There was a running back named Fred Thacker. They were just really tough, strong. And they won, and they won, and they won, and they've had some great players along the way. They picked up their 600th win in program history with a win against San Augustine, winning 22-8. The Yellow Jackets are now 2-1 in the year. Their 500th win was against a team that I think that's the playoff game I covered, against Groveton. And Groveton, of course, has their great lineage as well. So, Alto with win number 600. Saw this from Matt Stepp, who does an incredible job of covering Texas high school football for Dave Campbell's magazine and also for Bally Sports and of course, the Friday show and TexasFootball.com. Fort Worth Independent School District announced that Eastern Hills forfeits their district game on Friday, September 23rd against Kennedale because of a fight that they were in. And, Kennedale gets a 15-point win because of the forfeit. You see, social media allows us to see a lot more than we ever even realized was going on. And yes, on occasion, there were going to be fights in the stands at pro games. Is this ridiculous? What in the world? All these fans fighting, just haymakers and drunk off their you-know-what, or just their egos get involved. And social media, then we see it now more often. But players and teams and fighting and coaches and stuff. We've seen situations. We mentioned the youth football game with Aqib Talib's brother. Someone was shot and killed. What? What's going on? And I don't think it's going to stop. Everyone go, are we going to learn from this? We don't learn from anything. None of us do. But Fort Worth Eastern Hills will forfeit their opening district game. Kennedale was a heavy favorite anyway. That's that. Gary Kenny. He was, of course, an All-American linebacker at Baylor. Had a really good run as a head coach at Canton. His son, GJ, played at Tulsa, was going to go to Baylor, ended up at Texas, transferred to Tulsa, had a big time stats there at Tulsa, and then played for a while in the NFL. Now the head coach at Incarnate Word in San Antonio. Gary Kenny, everywhere he's been, there's been kind of drama. He's a hell of a football coach. Fiery personality. But there's always something. He was reassigned this week to assistant superintendent at Buna. I get to talk to coaches all the time, and when you're as old as I am and you've been in the business for as long as I have, and you have a website that is dedicated to high school football, I've talked to hundreds and hundreds of coaches over the years. I love it. I'll never forget a few years back, I contacted Richland Springs head coach Jerry Burkhart. Richland Springs has like 8 or 9 state championships. We put up the graphic a week or two ago in Class 6A, which is Class 1A, 6-man football. He was suspended this week for 3 years for recruiting violations, allegations, and then the UIL Executive Committee suspended him effective immediately for 3 years. Had to do with a phone call with a student athlete from Mullen High School. Mullen had gotten kind of tired. They thought that Jerry Burkhart and Richland Springs were kind of rating their players on occasion. Not talking about a chunk of them, but in 6-man football, it only takes about one. And so there was a 14-minute conversation, and due to that conversation, Jerry Burkhart and previous allegations and the fact that some of the answers he gave in front of the statewide committee, they just didn't seem right. He has been suspended for 3 years. Not on probation, not just reprimanded, suspended for 3 years as the head football coach at Richland Springs, effective immediately. And in 40 years of covering the game, high school football, I've seen coaches who have been reprimanded, suspended for a game, whatever. I don't know many that have been suspended, like for a length of time like that, and he has been. And so he's gone. For 3 years, Richland Springs, of course, has got their huge lineage. Here is the historical perspective for this week. Coaching playoff wins. This is in the history of this great state of high school football in Texas. 93 wins for Phil Danaher, Corpus Christi, Cal Allen. He was also at Dilley and Hampshire Finette, all-time leader with 93 wins. But he's got some people chasing him. And some of them, there's a good chance they may get to that. Randy Allen, who's now at Highland Park, has had a great run there. He's also been at Ballinger, Brownwood, and Abilene Cooper with 83. The asterisk means they are still coaching. Tim Buchanan, Alita's off to a rocky start for them, but they'll be just fine. 75 wins. Gary Joseph at Katy, 72 wins. Todd Dodge, who just retired, he has 70. Jason Herring at Refugio, still active. Denny Faith at Albany, still active with 66. Steve Lineweaver was at Commerce in a long run there and also at Trinity with 65, along with G.A. Moore, who won a lot at Pilot Point, Salina, and also Aubrey. He coached at Pilot Point 3 different times. He coached at Salina 2 different times, and they're huge rivals. At one point, he was the all-time wins leader in coaching. Now Phil Danaher has that mark. And then number 10, with the asterisks, Scott Surratt, who we featured a couple of weeks ago from Carthage. He's done that in a short amount of time, 65 all-time playoff wins. And then all-time state championships as head coaches. Gordon Wood, 9. G.A. Moore, 8. Scott Surratt, I just mentioned he's done it in a short amount of time at Carthage with 8. Tim Buchanan, 7. From Aledo, Todd Dodge retired with 7. And then Gary Joseph still hammering away as the head coach at Katy with 5. And then there are 10 coaches who have won 4 state titles. The ones who are active, Randy Allen at Highland Park, Jason Herring at Refugio, and we also featured a couple of weeks ago North Shore head coach John Kay. When we come back, China Spring first-year head coach Tyler Beatty. They have Conley this week. They moved back up to 4A Division I. They had a dramatic win 2 weeks ago against Melissa when they were down 3 scores to win 42-41. He's next. This is 365 Sports and the Texas High School Football Statewide Podcast.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
Smoaky.com presents the Texas High School Football Show on 365 Sports. Brought to you by Peters Chevrolet, Bubba's 33, TFNB Your Bank for Life, and Texas Farm Bureau Insurance.
Welcome back to the statewide Texas High School Football Podcast, powered by 365 Sports and Smoaky.com, and joined by first-year head coach Tyler Beatty at China Spring. And they have Conley this week after the win this past week. They blew out Mejia 63-7. You and I were talking off the air for a second, but Tyler, your non-district schedule, and including Conley, who's had a really, really nice start to their year with the win against La Vega, the win on the road against Yo. Down the road, I know you don't want to look down the road, but this might be the most challenging non-district schedule I've seen China Spring, and really a lot of people have in 4A.
Yeah, that was one heavy task that we had as far as putting the schedule together. Is it was hard to find opponents. We didn't want to travel, across the Great Lakes, the states, and have to go do that. But once we were able to find some opponents, and we knew that our district's tough enough, so we've got to prepare ourselves for district play. And so we've got some guys on our schedule that are going to be tough, but we're excited for the task at hand.
You're at a program now, and there has been the history at China Spring, and then last year, of course, you were on the staff with Brian Bell and won the state championship with the great run that the Cougars had. But it's a place now that is not just hoping to win, it's a place that expects to win. And did you see that even more in play when you had to come back against Melissa the way you did?
100%. The expectation for our kids is to go execute and have fun. And by their amount of heart that they showed the other night against Melissa, it really gives us a whole bunch of confidence of knowing what these kids are capable of doing and how far they're willing to go to make that happen. And, we're really excited about this group. We've got tons of seniors that have stepped up and led, and we're excited to continue to get a chance to play this Friday night.
Tony Salazar, the head coach at Westlake, takes over for Todd Dodge. They, of course, had won 3 straight state championships. He steps up as the defensive coordinator and becomes the head coach. You take over for a state championship program, and you got a taste of that being on the staff with us, Ed Bryan. Was there any idea that you would be the next head coach, and his move to Baylor was kind of sudden. How did all that go down as far as and how you were in the loop?
It was very sudden, and as the championship game was done, and a couple of days later, he called us all in and told us about his great opportunity he had. And I'm sure there were some guys on staff that knew that Brian at some point in time would make that jump, take that commitment, and we were all super excited for him. But, there was a little bit of uncertainty as to who that was going to be, and I prepared, and I had talked and prayed, and thankfully this opportunity came about, and I'm in the shoes I am now. So it was unexpected, right place, right time.
What was your pitch to the search committee? What did you say? Why should Tyler Beatty get this job?
One thing I felt most confident about was the fact that building relationships with kids is one of my strong suits. And not that the guys on staff didn't have that. That's just something that I just really take full fold. And also being a part of the staff is, not having to have somebody new come in to try to learn everything and everybody. And also being in the fold with the community of understanding exactly what the expectations of the community. And I felt really good about that. And then obviously the support of the staff that we had was behind me. So that helped immensely.
You have the transfer of the quarterback in Chase McCollum. He's a big, good-looking quarterback and had a big game, and he's going to have more as well. Obviously, Trey Hafford, he can do pretty much anything coming off a monstrous game against Mejia. Kyle Barton back from the leg injury and is plodding away doing what he does. You lost some weapons. Obviously, you lost the straw that stirred the drink in Major Bowden, among others. But did you have an idea you would be as explosive offensively as you have been so far?
We knew we for sure had the weapons. Prior to McCollum, we had some options, some things that we were put in place to make this machine go. And then whenever he moved in, we were able to take Jackson Battles out of that quarterback role and allow him to be a receiver and a vertical threat for us. The one thing that we looked at really was, what are we going to do with our offensive line? We lost 4 of the 5, and we knew we had some young guys that needed to step up. And thankfully, in the position that we were last season, we had a lot of backups that got exponential amount of time, and so played 40% of the snaps of all last year. And so we knew that was going to be one of the key things that we had to focus on going into the spring and obviously into the fall.
X-Line, Mott, Hale, among others on defense. How much, when you make a run as deep as you do, and some schools do it every year. We've seen some schools, in fact, the team that you beat, Carthage, of course, they have those extra 4, 5, 6 weeks of practice, even though the underclassmen may not be playing and may not be, but they're practicing. How much does a deep run the year before help the year after when you have those who at least were able to be like marinating in a way as a part of the winning?
100%. I think that's a huge piece. When you look at teams that can do it consecutively, can make it to the postseason, and obviously, even if you don't get to the state game, those are extra games that those kids are getting experience, getting the practice, getting coaching, watching film and analyzing. And so when you look at a senior class that's, maybe you're on the varsity as a sophomore, but you played 10 extra games over those previous 2 years, you're looking at a whole extra season that a kid's getting to gain knowledge and information from. So it also helps us as a coaching staff of understanding, hey, we've got to start putting some emphasis in when we're in a position and available to, we need to get these guys in the game.
You are very young as a head coach. You mentioned why you thought the job should be yours, and you had this nice start. And yes, there are some non-district games with Parish Episcopal, among others, and you've already been able to get through the game with Melissa. That's something that you have your opportunity, as you mentioned, timing, blessed to have all of that work your way. Does whatever age you are as a head coach even matter?
I'm sure it does. Like they say, wisdom comes with age, and I don't have all the wisdom. But one thing I do have fighting for me are all these guys in this coaching staff and all my support staff. We've got previous head coaches on our staff and guys that have been coaching for 30 years. So being able to pick their brain and get advice from them along the way I've always told them that if I'm the smartest guy in the room, then I'm not in the right place. And there's a lot of other information that gets pushed along my way through my support staff.
What is the one thing you did not realize you would have to deal with as a head coach?
The biggest thing is just having to improvise when you've got more athletes than you have space, and being able to make it work, and finding games for kids so that we don't have 40 guys waiting on the sideline not being able to play in a sub-varsity game. And so those are things that obviously we love. We love to have as many kids in our program as possible. So just being able to adapt and overcome.
Obviously, again, the game this week with Conley and what Terry Garrick has done. They had the win 2 weeks ago that opened some eyes against La Vega on the road across I-35, 5 minutes away. And then again, the win on the road in Cameron against Yo. They don't know really the status, I think, of their quarterback in Jelani McDonald. I think that's out there. How do you prepare for them and not knowing if he's going to play?
We've got to be able to contain the amount of athleticism and speed that they have. They're very quick, very strong, and though we're expecting to see Jelani, if we don't, we're still preparing as though we will. And then to prepare for their defenses, we're going to have to make people miss. We're going to have to get the ball on the edge and isolate, get one-on-one matchups the best we can, and win our matchups.
Tyler Beatty, head coach at China Spring. They have Conley this week at home, down the road in district, including La Vega and Stephenville, in just a 5-team district, and so the non-district schedule, very, very challenging. Tyler, thanks for your time. We appreciate it, and good luck this weekend.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Tyler Beatty, head coach at China Spring, on the Texas High School Football Statewide Podcast. Coming up next, a question or two from you about high school football in my 42 years of covering it. Later on, the elite games of the week. This is 365 Sports, powered by Smoaky.com.
After my first car accident, I feared the biggest damage would be to my wallet. I expected a mountain of bills and a long, drawn-out process. But my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent was there when I needed her and helped me get back on my feet and in my car in no time. Instead of a hassle, I got reassurance and a quick recovery.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Smoaky.com presents the Texas High School Football Show on 365 Sports. Brought to you by Peters Chevrolet, Bubba's 33, TFNB, your bank for life, and Texas Farm Bureau Insurance.
Welcome back to the Texas High School Football Podcast. 365 Sports and Smoaky.com. A couple of questions this week. I asked for the questions on my Twitter feed. What's a question about high school football that you might have, or something about over the years of me covering the great sport of Texas high school football? This from Donald in Palestine. What is your favorite game broadcast of a state championship? Well, that's personal. Not that I'm not going to answer it, but it's personal. Both Jennifer and Craig, son and daughter and son, went to Lee High School, which is now Legacy High School in Tyler. And so in 2004, Lee beat Spring Westfield to win the state championship. They had always been overlooked in that area for a lot of good reasons. They were always kind of average. So they've had a pop here and there of a nice run. But they were always overshadowed because of the history of John Tyler, now Tyler High, of Longview, because it's Longview and they're as consistent as anybody I've ever seen, and that might be part of question 2. Lufkin, of course, has had their great run. Marshall's had their great run. You know, back in the day, Texas High. And so not that they didn't have some pockets of winning. The first year I broadcast their games was 1991. They went to the quarterfinals and lost to Killeen in the quarterfinals down at Kyle Field in College Station. That was their best run ever, and then they made a habit of that. Mike Owens, who came in from Port Arthur Jefferson, took over the program. I think it was in 1997. They weren't very good, and they were getting beat up by people. Then 98, they made the playoffs in the very second year he was there. And then they made this run. They lost in the second round a couple of times to teams that eventually won a state championship. And then they turned the corner in 2002, and they went to the semifinals and lost to Midland. Matt Flynn was the Lee's quarterback. He, of course, went to LSU, won a national title as their starting quarterback, and played for a long time in the NFL. 2003, they lost to the Woodlands at Texas Stadium in triple overtime. 50-48. Danny Amendola, remember him for the Patriots? Texas Tech, he was on that Woodlands team. And so you're wondering, was that it? And then they came back the next year and won the state title in 2004. Daughter Jennifer was a senior that year, so that's personal. Craig was doing our sideline coverage. That's part of it as well. And I did the broadcast, and I remember it was like I thought I'd never see that. I did a John Tyler State Championship run, that team that was so amazing. Remember 1994 and that crazy game with Plano East that got attention countrywide, around the country. I was able to pick up some of their playoff games. I was asked to do their last 3 playoff games. And they won the state title down in the Astrodome in 1994 against Westlake. And that one, probably because of the emotions of that year at John Tyler, was huge. And I've been fortunate to do other state championship broadcasts as well. A couple from Midway losing to Lake Travis when they had Baker Mayfield as their quarterback, and also in Tanner Mordecai, the Midway team in 2017 that was beaten by Cypress Fairbanks. But yeah, 2004, and watching Lee do something no one ever thought possible was something because of Jennifer as a senior, Craig's on the sidelines, I'm in the broadcast booth, and that was really cool. Question number 2. In all the years you've covered East Texas high school football, and, of course, I've been in Waco since 2010, but still, with my website and just my time in East Texas for 30 years or so, been the most consistent winner year in and year out. Well, lately, of course, there's a few teams, Gilmer, and we know what run they've made, Jeff Traylor, and now with what they do, and with Coach Metzel, and then in Carthage with Scott Surratt, and there's some other teams, early on, Dangerfield. But, man, how do you outdo the consistency of Longview? When I arrived in Longview in 1984, I moved from Lufkin, Nacogdoches to Longview to cover that area for a local TV station, Channel 7 in Tyler. And Doug Cox was the head coach. Longview was a machine. They ran the power I. They played good defense. They were good. In the first year I was there, they were ranked number 1 in the state, got beat early, and it just didn't reach their expectations. But other than maybe a year or two, since that first year in 84 when I arrived in Longview, how many years have they had where they were down? There was a little bit of a pocket. And the coaching changed from Robert Biro, who played and led Longview to a state championship game against Katy, but they lost. And then here comes Pat Collins from Louisiana. Now John King, who took over, who was a part of his staff. They won it all with his son, a junior quarterback who's now at A&M. I would think year in and year out, for the 42 years, I guess it is, that I've covered it, there have been pockets and streaks from places like, I mentioned Alto and Groveton earlier, what Tenaha's done, what Carthage is doing now the last 10 years or so. But I think year in and year out, and I hope I haven't Tatum for a long time, but a lot of these teams now have had these ups and downs. But I would think Longview year in and year out, without question, has been the most consistent winner. And I'm talking about not just being pretty good, but really, really good. And so that's the answer to the question from Ryan in Tyler. Thank you both for the question. You can send me a question by going to @DavidSmoak, my Twitter page. You can ask it right there on my page, or you can direct message me as well. Or on Smoaky.com, you can contact me with a back message. Now, here are the games of this week, week number 4. It's already week 4 of Texas high school football. Cal Allen and Cuero, great matchup here. The Gobblers 3-0, Cal Allen 3-0. That's the one at the very top. Remember, the number on the right, you see the rankings. They are the combined ranking. Cal Allen's is ranked number 1 in the state, and so is Cuero. So the number would be 2. Brock and Gunner. Brock is 0-3. They're probably going to be 0-4, but they're still really good because their non-district schedule is crazy. South Oak Cliff is 0-3, probably about to go 0-4 against Parish Episcopal, who beat Aledo earlier this year. But again, they'll be fine. Just a really brutal non-district schedule. Centerville and Mart, strength and power against speed and Mart. That doesn't mean Mart does not have strength and power. They do. But Centerville loves to run the football. They had a fullback in Paxton Hancock, 299 yards last week. Mart might just have too much firepower. That's going to be an interesting game to watch. There's that China Spring Connolly game. 2 3-0s. Connolly, of course, if they don't have Jelani McDonald, then that may hurt. It will hurt. But that's a great game to watch as well. That game is at Connolly. Lindale and Gilmer's a good one to look at. Longview, I mentioned them. And Lufkin, they've played for like 100 years. They're not in the same district anymore. They haven't been for a long, long time, but they have put on some classic, crazy good games. Both 3-0. La Vega trying to bounce back after back-to-back losses, played at Lorena. Lorena lost their opener to China Spring, but you know how good they are. And I think La Vega trying to turn the corner. They'll be okay, but they need a win after losing a couple of games. And they got blistered by Midlothian Heritage last week. Down to the bottom, there's that Marshall-Carthage game. Carthage 3-0, Marshall's 5A. Carthage doesn't care what class you're in. They're going to play you because they have to, because it's hard for people. Well, it's hard for them to get games. We just heard what we heard from Tyler Beatty about the same thing now with China Spring. Franklin, 3-0, defending state champions at Jasper. They're moving up an extra level to play this non-district game, Franklin is. And they've been good. They haven't blown people out, but they still are so solid. And Jasper, of course, is a school that can give them some trouble as well. The last game, Lancaster 2-1 and McKinney North at 3-0. Those are the elite games. All of this information based on pigskinprep.com and Jerry Forrest. And it's the ranking totals on the right-hand side. The lower the number, the better the game based on the rankings of these two teams. All right. Week number 4 is about to wrap up. Hope you have your favorite team come away with a win, whatever stadium you're at this weekend. The stats, the players, the atmosphere, the fans, the band, the drill team, the coaches, and you. How about that? Week number 4 is almost here. We'll be back next week with week number 5 and have so much more to bring you, we hope. I'm David Smoak for, again, Jacob Wilson, Jack McKenzie, the High School Football Podcast, 365 Sports, and Smoaky.com. Battle in the gun with Hill to his right. Play action to the right. Steps up, throws over the middle. He's got Thornton. Caught it! Junior Thornton. Split. 6. Touchdown. Midway.
Smoaky.com presents the Texas High School Football Show on Sikkim 365 Radio. Brought to you by Peters Chevrolet, Bubba's 33, TFNB, your bank for life, and Texas Farm Bureau Insurance.
Hill, right side, finds a seam. Hill, 20. Hill, 10. Hill, touchdown. Midway, no flags. Midway takes the lead by more than one score. And how about the Big Uglies inside?